When I saw the scene with the track, I was like, yeah, because Polly is my favorite character in it, and she's a badass, and she just walks out of that car with a cigarette in her mouth, and she steps on shit.
Yeah, we're talking Peaky Blinders with this evening's guest on the podcast, Jehnny Beth from Savages. The eagle-eared amongst you will have noticed a snippet of brand new solo music from Jehnny was debuted in the most recent series of the show. That track, I'm the Man, gets an official release as part of the soundtrack in mid-November. But don't worry if Peaky Blinders isn't your thing though, we talk about plenty of other stuff. That's just one of the projects that Jehnny has been busy with recently. She made the first episode of an all-new music TV show called Echoes. It was interesting to hear about her reasons for doing that. She and her long-term collaborator Johnny Hostile also worked together on the soundtrack for the film XY Chelsea, the documentary movie about transgender activist Chelsea Manning, released back at the start of the summer. Other places the chat goes, the success of her friends' idols over the past couple of years. We get Jehnny's thoughts on the latest Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds album, and the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie that came out not that long ago. We have a chat about that, and I ask about where Savages are at right now too. I should probably mention tonight's episode is the final one of the series. Stuart and I have been here every Thursday night at midnight for the past 10 weeks. I wanted to say thank you again to all of our guests on this run. That was Karen O, Kate Tempest, Serge Pizzorno, Julia Jacqueline, Haim, Stephen Maltmus, Holly Herndon, Adam Green, George the Poet, and of course Jehnny tonight. Thanks to all those people who helped us get those guests as well, and thanks to all the people who have said complimentary things about our podcast or recommended it to your friends and your tweets and things like that. We appreciate the support, and I know this gets boring to say it every time, so we don't, and we haven't recently, but if you do enjoy the podcast, please do leave a review or a rating wherever you're listening to this right now. We will be back at some point, hopefully in early 2020. But enough of all that, I leave you on this high note, Jehnny Beth on Midnight Chats. One final thing, if you do like what we do, please consider supporting this podcast by subscribing to Loud and Quiet magazine. We ship all over the world. The information is at loudandquiet.com/subscribe, where we will post you our next 9 issues for as little as £3 per month. It keeps our monthly independent magazine in print, and it helps us make this podcast. How are you doing, first of all? How are things?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Good. I want to talk about, or I want to start by asking you about some of the projects you've been recently involved with.
Sure.
You've been busy. First off, just a few weeks ago, you made a TV show.
Right, yeah.
Tell me about, it's called Echoes, right?
Yeah, Echoes.
Tell me a little bit about how that came about. Has that been something you wanted to do for a while?
Yeah, well, weirdly, it was something I wanted to do at the back of my head, but it was not something that I expected to do so soon. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing the radio show on Beats One for 2 years, and talking to different artists, and my attraction to that was that I love to, probably just as much as you, to talk to artists and try to understand how their passion for music came about, and how they, it turned out they dedicated all their life to music. And also, I love to hear musicians and have them talk and have them express, things about not just music, but about the world and about their visions and the way they see things as they are, and culture in general. So I guess the TV show is an extension to that. So I was asked if I would be interested to try do a first episode of a TV show, and if I could come up with a concept. And so me and Johnny Hostile worked on that together, and Johnny actually came up with the name Echoes with Jehnny Beth. He came up with my radio show name as well. He's really good with names. I'm not very good with names. But so any idea is, Echoes is, it's a sound word, but it's also the idea of having different musicians respond to each other. and have their experiences echo with another musician's experience, and try to have that group talk. So the TV show is a live performance in front of an audience, so it's a gig. Okay. It's like 3 bands coming in, or 3 artists coming in and performing in front of an audience, and at the end, part of the audience stay, and all the musicians regroup together in a sort of Dr. Feel-Good sort of round circle with chairs. We all sit down and we have a group talk. And my desire for that is to, find the resonances between each musicians, and to try. I think there's a scene at the moment, there's a lot of musicians who have a lot to say. And I think especially on TV, it really annoys me that musicians are often asked to come and perform but never asked to sit down and talk. I mean, compared to actors or directors or I don't know, people in movies for sure. I just feel that it's a shame because there's a real voice that is missing out, especially on TV. So that's the idea. So for the first episode we shot a few weeks ago, which is going to be broadcasted before the end of the year on Arte, the channel. It's a Franco-German channel, but it's going to be available on the web, on the web, worldwide. So I invited Primus Scream idols and a young band from Hull called Life. And it was amazing. It was great because it just worked out really well. There were some, incredible parts of the discussion, and the live performances were amazing. And the set of Echoes is quite unusual. The stage has this sort of white panel coming down to the audience, like a white tongue. I don't know how to describe it. The musicians can come up and down and to the crowd, and visually it's quite stunning in this sort of brutalist venue in Paris underneath the Palais de Tokyo Museum. So that was the idea. But never in my life I thought, oh my God, I'm going to do a TV show, it's going to be happening. But it just happened, and I'm glad. And I feel we're going to know really soon if we get a series or if we can do more. But I've already received emails like Underworld want to be on the TV show. I've received, like friends have been contacting me, be like, oh, we want to do the Jehnny Beth show. And I'm really happy about that. I just want to bring my friends on TV. Really, that's all I want to do. Yeah. I want to talk about what they're doing, and I
think it's interesting you saying that you felt like there was a lack of opportunity for artists to come and speak in a long form way on TV. It always seems to be the way that, for example, if you're watching something like Jules Holland, it's like, oh, here's 10 seconds with this artist to say something.
But it's always the big artists.
Of course, exactly. Yeah. And then all the same with like the Graham Norton show or something. It's like you perform and then you're on the sofa for all of 30 seconds to somebody say, oh, your new single's out. Yeah,
I've done that with Gorillaz. We performed, and me and Damon went to the sofa. It was fine. I did a good joke, and then that was it.
Exactly.
But so I wish there was more of another way of seeing this.
A chance to be more expansive and actually get into, explore some of the themes and the intention and all those things that go along with making music, obviously.
Put the artists on the same level as well. Like when we did the first episode of Echoes, Bobby was sitting with idols and Life, and they're all on different times in their careers, but it's a group discussion, and I've witnessed so many discussions like that in backstage, at festivals, or musicians just meet up and share. And I think that's how we exchange knowledge. We can not repeat mistakes. We can expand our mind, or just, oh, you do this way, or that's interesting. And, and just, have the sense of community as well, which exists in hip-hop, and I want it to be, and it exists in my community, but I want a platform to show it.
Did you enjoy the role of being host? You're used to broadcasting, speaking to artists. Like you say, you've been doing the radio show for a number of years now, but this is a different thing. It's a new format, something brand new, something you've been thinking about. Yeah, how did you feel about doing that?
I definitely didn't eat that day, that's for sure. I was a bit nervous, but I think it's because it's the first time and you want to do it right. So you put a bit of pressure on yourself, but I enjoyed it. I just, I hope the artist enjoyed it. That was my main concern. And that's what I've been telling the whole team who's been working on the TV show. I'm like, it's all about them. So they need to be happy with the sound. They need to be happy about the welcome, the way they're treated, about the food, about, it's simple as that. But if artists are happy to do something like that, because no artist I know love to do promotion or love to do TV shows, but if it happens well and if it's a good it's a good reception, it's it's a good team, and it's a good, then they will want to come back. So that was my main point.
Could you make a TV show like that in the UK? It doesn't feel like...
Maybe.
Do you think?
There's Lauren Laverne. You don't know how lucky you are to have BBC Six.
Yeah,
true. You don't know, like, because in France there isn't. There isn't a platform for music I love to listen to. I mean, yesterday morning I put on BBC Six and it was sung to the siren, and I was like, whoa. Really? I mean, I would put that on when I wake up in the morning. But in France, there isn't. And there isn't a platform, radio or TV, for the music I listen to, for sure.
You mentioned that it's going to get broadcast later in the year. You're presumably excited to hopefully do more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great that you've already got people getting in touch saying that they want to be involved. I mean, I saw some of the photos from the recording. It did look like really futuristic. In terms of like the set design, it looked really high spec and really stylish, and also like the kind of thing that you would... If I was an artist, it would look quite inviting to be like, I think I want to do that.
I hope so, yeah. So the set was designed by Antoine Carlier, who's the designer in my label, Pop Noir Records. And he's designed the whole set, and he's doing the art direction of everything. And then Jehnny is doing the music for the intro and all the... So it's a very close team. Like, it's my friends, it's people I know really well, I've been working with for a long time.
Can't wait to see the first episode go out before the end of the year, and I do hope there's going to be more, because it sounds fantastic.
Yeah, well, me too. Let's see.
You mentioned one of the artists that you had there on the TV show was Idols. To see their rise has been really exciting.
Yeah, it has.
And their message so direct. You know Joe and the band well, you've met them on a number of occasions. Have you kind of witnessed their ascent the last 18 months and really... been like, yeah, we need a band like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel very close to what Idols are doing. I was very happy to meet Joe and the band. I went to see them at the Electric Ballroom when they did like 3 or 4 nights in a row, and we went there every night. And there's obviously some similarities with Savages, I think, on the way they address the audience, the way the message is really direct. When Brutalism came out, so I had Joe on the radio show, because I felt very interested lyrically of what he was doing. He's one of my favourite lyricists. His directness, his honesty, but the no bullshit thing, I think, is what really attracts me to them, and the violence in the sounds. And then, I mean, obviously the fact that they're a band of men, they're sort of reinventing what it means to be a man in a band. This sort of, which I think it was very necessary. Because we've been having a lot of conversations about how women are in a band, or what it means, or what it is. And then suddenly they come about and they're like, oh, you can be a band full of men, and it doesn't have to be, sex and drugs and rock and roll. It can be, or it could be, but I mean, it can be about being sensitive as well, or talking about subjects which are unexpected, fatherhood or and I love that. I think that's reinventing something, and I think they're bringing a new conversation to the scene, which I love.
And moving the narrative on, perhaps out of a lot of different music styles can maybe get caught in a cycle of repeating similar themes or refrains or visuals. Is it important, do you think, to hear a band coming out? I mean, Savages are a perfect example of that, moving the narrative forward. Like, we always need that to advance what it is we're listening to.
I remember when Savages came out, I mean, at the beginning when we started, it felt quite alone. I mean, I didn't feel like we had a scene, and we had, which I think there is now. I think it's kind of different now with bands like Fountains DC, Murder Capital, Crows, there's, Idols. There's this sort of, even sonically, there's something going on with guitar music, which I think is interesting. But what I like is that there's also an eclecticism about it. Like bands, and like Joe would say, like, you listen to hip hop and then you want to write a song, or you listen to techno and you want to write a song, but the outcome is, rock music, I suppose.
The last time you and I met up was, I think, almost 3 years ago, and it was coming towards the end of the touring that you'd done for the second Savages record.
Yeah.
And you were talking about lots of projects that were in the pipeline to do with your own composition, your own music. Some of those have come to fruition in the last 12 months. For example, the work that you've done on the Chelsea Manning movie soundtrack that you did earlier this year. What attracted you to the idea of working on that project? So
Tim Hawkins, the director, contacted me and said that he wanted me to be involved in some ways or another into the soundtrack. I wanted to work with Jehnny on this because he's very, very, very good with instrumental music. and we have a long, term relationship in terms of making music together. So I knew it was kind of going to be easy to do it together in the studio in Paris, and we had sort of a short deadline to do it. So we started working straight away, and pretty soon we realized it was going to be easy because Tim had the same references as us. We were sort of talking the same language, so it was great. And the movie is, it's a political subject. Chelsea Manning is, the trans whistleblower who created WikiLeaks, really. I mean, not created, but was a big part of
crucial
its success.
To that story, exactly.
And so it's a political subject. However, it's not why I did it. I mean, I admire her as a historical character. I admire her courage, but just the prospect of making music for a long length movie was exciting. And a good movie, because it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
It's funny how it's turned out to be quite a movie about someone, about a human being, instead of a political figure. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, but that's quite... some people don't like it for that reason, but I love it for that reason. It's not an activist movie, you know what I mean?
No, exactly. It concentrates a lot on Chelsea Manning, like the character.
And her feelings and her emotions and how she struggles with what she's done and tries to make sense of who she is.
The process of being involved with that, the soundtrack, if we just isolate that, people can go away and listen to that. It's a very moving, very atmospheric, chilling, beautiful piece of composition that the movie's soundtracked by, that you yourself and Jehnny worked on. Did you work to the images that were going to appear on screen? Were you given a brief? How did that set of songs come together?
I agree with you with the notion that the music there's a gentleness to it, and I think that's what we were trying to bring, because what she goes for is so harsh, so hard. It's almost like you want to approach it with delicacy. You don't want the music to take over what she's feeling. So there is a gentleness to the music, I think, for that reason. I'm trying to envelope her, to support her, to. There's also really more harshness in the music when it comes to war and it comes to talking about those things. The references were quite wide. I mean, obviously... There's the Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, soundtracks, the use of piano, electronics reference, which I think we all agreed on straight away with Jehnny, Tim and I.
Is that The Social Network? Did they work on that?
Yeah, The Social Network, exactly. Maybe a bit of Mr. Robot, the idea, all the hacker sort of side of it. And the rest was just trying to... I think Jehnny said something interesting when describing our process, was we were like the band and Chelsea Manning was the lead singer, because she was leading the way. You had to support what she was going through, what she was saying. And sometimes we even tuned the music to her voice, right. Which sounds crazy, but...
Were you finding interviews on YouTube and stuff? And
her voice in the movie.
Oh, okay, so you were working to the visuals that were already created. And a sentence or
word she would be saying, we used it as if it was a lyric and tried to tune our instruments to her voice.
Okay.
Just to fit as much as we could to her.
Yeah. Was that the first time you've worked in that sort of way?
In a film, you mean? Or
just because you were taking this... segments of interviews, I suppose, the documentarian style storytelling, and then creating some original compositions.
Yeah.
So was that a new challenge, a new way of exploring your own creativity?
It was new in the sense of making a long length movie, the music from start to end. But it didn't feel new in the sense that we felt ready. Because we had worked a lot on image before. Me and Jehnny, we did a lot of work for, years back, we did some work for Chanel, doing music for their images and things like that, and with a film company we're involved with in France, and we had a few experiences doing short films, so it didn't feel new completely, and the idea of crafting music to a context as well is something we've done a lot with Savages. We would write our own music for the pre-shows, we would or write music for an intro of a video, or adapt music, and always doing that, and that's work we've always done with Jehnny, so it didn't feel new in that sense, Yeah.
Did you feel moved the first time you saw the movie and everything complete?
Yeah. I mean, I was moved the first time I watched the movie. I feel one of my favorite scenes. When the first time me and Jehnny watched it, there was no music all the way through, but when we saw the first time you see her in the movie is when she's released and she's walking up the plane, the private jet that they. So she has a live vest, and we could hear music even though there was no music. It was sort of really mind blowing to see her walk up that plane, especially when you know how Tim filmed that. He was alone with his camera. There was no guarantee he was going to be able to have that shot. It's a long story short, but like nobody knew if she was going to be released. So until Obama released her, and so he was kind of ready for weeks. He was waiting with his camera and waiting to see where he was supposed to be and to catch that moment, and he managed to get it. So it's quite moving to see that.
Viewers of Peaky Blinders would have heard a snippet of new Jehnny Beth music in an episode broadcast quite recently during the most recent series. And you kind of shared that and trailed the fact that there's going to be potentially some more music in 2020.
Yes.
What can you tell me about what you've been working on that, in that respect?
Right. This was sort of not an accident, a happy accident, let's say. I think Anthony Byrne, the director of Peaky Blinders, we've become friends, and he was interested in hearing what I was working on. And it was his choice to have I'm the Man, a snippet of it in the episode. I thought that was a great idea, but it was sort of, okay, this is happening. It was sort of funny, but I think it's more and more, I like the fluidity of that, and, the idea of not planning necessarily and let things happen organically. So, yeah, they liked the track, they wanted to have it on the scene. And when I saw the scene with the track, I was like, yeah, because Polly is my favorite character in it, and she's a badass, and she just walks out of that car with a cigarette in her mouth, and she steps on shit, and then she walks bare feet to Arthur and Tommy, and I think that was just a perfect scene for it, and so I was happy to have it in. Yeah. But then so the Peaky Blinders soundtrack's coming out mid-November, and so the track will be in the soundtrack.
Fantastic.
So that will be the first Jehnny Beth track coming out.
Cillian Murphy's talked about his love of Savages before.
Yeah.
Have you been a long-term fan of that show? How did you come across it?
I've watched everything, and I watched it from the beginning, and I loved it. Obviously, when Cillian wanted to have Savages in it, then it was a no-brainer for me for the previous season. And then we sort of met, and I'm a fan of the show. I think it's one of those where you have a lead character that is not entirely good. And I think that's what I like about also The Joker that just came out. The idea of having a hero that isn't one, but also that is sort of making you doubt your morals. And I think all your preconceptions about things, or how you see life, and I kind of like that. I think art should do that. It should shake you a little bit out of your comfort zone about what you think is right and what you think is wrong. And I think Peaky has that. And all of the characters, Arthur, I mean, obviously Tommy's brother is very, very flawed. He has this, he can't stop himself from being violent. And I think those characters are very interesting for that reason. What I like is that you need to use your imagination in order to like them. You need to do a leap. You need to make an effort. You need to connect things that you don't usually connect with, and connect together in your head. It's not just given to you. And I like that effort, that you are asked to do that effort.
What do you think of the Joker film? I went to see it maybe just over a week ago, and I understand why it's been divisive, but I personally thought it was really good.
I don't understand why it's been divisive. It's really crazy the world we're living. I don't understand why things have been taken so seriously. It's that first degree thing that I don't understand. It's a film. It's art. It's not. I don't understand why everything has to be put to the real life. Why we make music, why we make films, to not necessarily have to put it back to real life, to the morals of real life, to the the way we live or we think in reality. It has nothing to do with a film or with. For me, I don't get it. I don't get it why it has to fit with now, with the morals of today, with the way we see things today. I found that very sad when I hear, people say, "Oh, I don't read that book because the writer was, a racist, or he was, or he was." I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, you can be. I know really good people in life, but they don't necessarily good writers. Like, I know it sounds stupid, but I feel for me, but maybe it's because I'm French, I don't know. But, like Celine is an incredible French writer, and there hasn't been many amazing writers, that can really move forward the literature, French literature, and move forward our language, or he's using our language, the French language, and making it is a mirror to who we are. And yes, his politics are very, very wrong, but read it because it's an incredible book. And it's just, for me, I don't get that sort of line where you have to read art through the prism of today's morality.
And there's that culture of almost retrospectively disregarding somebody and like basically applying like today's morals to something like art that was created 50, 100 years ago. And it's like, but we live in a different age. We live in a different time. And the morality
changes all the time. It's not something that's going to stay fixed.
For me, that film was great. I thought it abandoned all of the familiar tropes of that genre of movie.
Yeah, completely.
That I've just got I sort of got tired. I was was waiting for something like that to come along, to be like, we need to, regardless of what you think. Yeah, just something a little bit more refreshing. Like that genre is going to just, it's like that we talked about earlier in music. You can just repeat yourself and you become caught in these cycles of just the familiar. And yet something like that comes along and you think, okay, even if you don't like it, that feels like it's an offshoot of that. It's something new. It might create something different.
Absolutely. In the room so there was a packed room when we went to see it. First night it came out in France, and you could see all the people there were people who used to go to see superhero movies. Like really, or even the last Star Wars, like Walt Disney, like really commercial movies. And wow, the silence in the room on the first half of the movie was incredible. Everyone was like, what is this? Suddenly people like that are going to see what I consider to be an art film, almost. First half of it is kind of really arty.
This goes back to the stuff we were just talking about Peaky Blinders, about the characters being flawed and full of layers. So the Joker, to go and try and tell that origin story of an individual that's so complex.
Yeah.
I admire the fact they tried to do it, and personally I think like they made a really good job of trying to really get to the root of really how does somebody get from being born a human being to be somebody who thinks it's rational to blow up a hospital. So if you think of those basics, to then approach that as a film and be like, right, we're going to have to try and join the dots to get our viewers to that point where you understand why this individual does that. I thought it was quite an extraordinary piece of filmmaking.
Yeah,
really.
And I think if you're studying psychology, you should go and see that movie. I think there's a lot of real facts about how insanity creeps in and how you become a killer. I think definitely it's going to be studied, that film.
Yeah, no doubt.
in universities. I think they're going to be showing that to students about, so how does a murderer come about? Have a look at this film.
Yeah, it's great that it takes place in that arena that normally wouldn't tackle that type of subject matter.
Yeah, I agree.
We talked a bit about the music that you've been working on, the TV show, the soundtrack work you've done. What does the next kind of few months hold for you? What are you currently working on? What are you hoping to do more of? Or can't you say? For people listening, Jehnny's just made a very tight-lipped face. She might as well have done that little thing where you kind of zip the mouth.
Sure. I mean, I've been working on new music, and there'll be an announcement soon. So, yeah, I mean, I'm hoping to do more of echoes and release new music. Yeah, I'm working on a lot of different things like that. Yeah. So
TBC, news to come.
Yes, definitely announcements soon. Yeah.
When we met before, we talked a bit about kind of like Savages and we went in depth talking about how you approach it as an art project, and how it was that in terms of what happened next, it was important that you all go away and do your own thing, fill every individual member of the band's head with their own ideas, explore their own creativity, and when the right point comes, come back together. Is that still your attitude towards what's going on with Savages?
I mean, I love Savages. I think it's an incredible band. I mean, to be part of. I've definitely decided to put it on hold for the reasons that you mentioned. As far as coming back together, there's no plans for now. I don't really have a plan one way or another. I think I wanted to collaborate with different people, have different experiences, and I don't really put borders on my mind about what's going to be, happening next after this. So yeah, no exclusion, no particular decisions on that side. I just leave it open. I think that's the way my brain works as well. I don't like to I don't like to really. I just go where the music takes me, and where my creativity feels the most excited. I hate to feel bored, and I hate to feel trapped and creatively. So yeah.
Just finally, I want to ask about some of the music that you might have discovered recently. I know you're a big Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds fan. What did you think of the album that came out recently? Have you had a chance to live with it?
I have to say, I'm not that much into it compared to the two last records. The two last records were, for me, masterpieces, and they were really important part of. They really influenced me in some ways. I feel this one is sort of almost too real, too close to the reality of grief, and and I feel a bit like looking at something that I shouldn't be looking at. When the others felt a bit more mysterious and sort of mysterious and poetic, and also there's this sort of Jesus thing, which seems to be a thing at the moment. I have a hard time with religion, and sometimes, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's because of the Kanye West thing at the moment, but I feel like this is sort of going backwards artist bringing back religion into their work. And I say backwards because I feel that, come on, we need to get out of this. And I'm not as strong, but like I'm not a big fan of religions, and I have a hard time with that. I'm more of a believer in the universe and in science, and there's so much knowledge I've discovered the past few years getting into that. I feel that anyone who understands that we live on an earth and the way it is, and that we're all made of stardust, and anyone who understands that, or gets, who understands there are actual facts about those things. I don't understand a religion, why religions are still existing. But I mean, so that was my barriers with the Nick Cave record, which I say that with the most respect and the most, I love his work, obviously. But sometimes I've actually gone on and off, and sometimes he release records I didn't really get into as much, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make me love him less, or I don't judge him on that. I don't care. So yeah,
I think that's an important thing for anybody who makes music and is just a fan of music to be able to say. It's like when an artist or a band or whoever it is makes a catalogue of work, like you don't have to be a devout 10 out of 10 follower for every piece of work they make. Not every Radiohead album has been incredible. Like, I'm sorry, but
yeah. And sometimes you can go back on records years later. I think that's quite fantastic when that happens. Records you were too young to discover. Like, I remember discovering My Unfaithful Broken English, years later. I was too young when it came out. Yeah, and you have to be ready for a certain record, sometimes.
Anyway, good night.